Hello Gainium family, welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how to supercharge your Gainium crypto trading bots by automating anything you can imagine using n8n. n8n is a powerful open source automation platform that lets you connect different apps and services together to create workflows. Think of it as a visual programming tool that requires minimal coding, much like Zapier or Make.com if you used those in the past. But this one is free and open source. Before we get started, I would like to mention that I've made a post about this automation in the community. So if you have any questions or any problems setting up this automation, you can come by and ask anything you want. We will also be talking about some places where you can host n8n for free. And this is also the place where other members will be sharing their automation. So definitely come by and check it out. All right, let's get started. Today, we're going to build this workflow. And in case you're new to n8n, I'm going to cover a little bit of the basics. The most important thing you need to know is that n8n workflows are built by nodes. And nodes are these squares that you can see here, and they perform different actions. They can receive data, they can send data, or they can transform data. Nodes are connected by this line, and these lines are how the information is flowing across the workflow. One important thing to notice is that there are different kind of nodes. You have the normal nodes that are the square nodes. There are other nodes that accept subnodes, like this one from the AI agent. And then you have the trigger nodes, which are the ones that have like a left rounded part. And coming from Make and Zapier, this part confused me a little bit, the trigger nodes. So I'm gonna just spend a little more time to explain it. You can see that there are different kinds of triggers. We have here this Telegram trigger that it will activate the workflow starting from here whenever our bot receives a message, and then you can see that it can go either to the commands or the AI section. Then we have another kind of trigger here, which is when clicking test workflow. This part of the workflow is only going to activate if I click this button. There is no other way to run these nodes. And another more interesting one is the sub workflow trigger. So this trigger starts only when it's called from another n8n workflow. We're going to be using the sub workflow trigger quite a bit, so let me tell you a little bit more about it. You can see here, for example, from the Telegram trigger that we call these ones at execute workflow at different points. Even the AI agent, all these tools are actually sub workflows. So all these parts are actually calling this one, okay? So this is a way of reusing the code so that you don't have this exact same code in different parts of the app that will make it really messy. And what I should mention here is that when you put a node to execute a workflow, you can either, wait, let me remove this. You can select it from the list, which workflow do you want to run, or you can insert an ID. And the thing I'm doing here is that I'm making an expression, it's a code, that it's going to automatically grab the current workflow ID. And why am I doing this? Is because if you hard code your workflow ID here, like this, what's going to happen if you clone this, if you share it with other people, is that they won't be able to run this, because when they save it on their own server, their workflow ID is going to be different. So if you always use this and it's a workflow that is being called inside the main workflow, then when other people clone it to their own server, it will work for them as well. Now that you have a better idea of how n8n works, we're going to be starting one workflow from scratch. However, I'm going to be copying this part over here, the authentication flow, because this one is not going to change. So there isn't a lot of creativity that you can have with it. It's important to know more or less what's happening there, but we don't need to go a lot into detail. So let's go to the plus and let's start a new workflow. And here we're going to paste the authentication flow, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. As you can see, there is a place here where you need to set your credentials, and this is your API key and your secret. You can get those from your Gainium account under settings. First, you need to enable 2FA, and then you add an API key. Now, the API key can have write or read only permission. If you're only planning to retrieve information and you're not planning to make any changes to your bots or deals, like closing bots or closing deals, then you can use read only. But if you're planning to make those changes, then you will need write. To perform any action via the API, we need to authenticate or request. And we do that by creating a signature that we send with the headers before we call the API. You can get more information about that in the API docs. We have here how you can create the signature, and this is what we have done here. First, we prepare the authentication, which is we take the things that we're going to need and we create a pre-hash, okay? Then this pre-hash is going to be encoded, and we have this kind of encoding, and it's not very important that you know all the details, but just know that there are a signature being generated. The signature is being sent in the headers, and then finally we make the API call. And this workflow takes a few inputs. The first is the endpoint. You can see here in the docs that we have different endpoints depending on what you want to do. If you want to get the grids or you want to get the combo bots, these are the endpoints. Then we take a method, and the method is this one that you see on the left. It could be get, post, or delete. Each endpoint is going to have their own kind, so you just can check that out on the docs. And the last one is body, or there were at least some of the endpoints that require a body. I think we've changed that, but if in the future there is a need for body, then that's where you will write it. That's all about our authentication flow, and now we can start building the workflow. First, we're going to add a Telegram trigger. So we're gonna go to the plus button and search for Telegram, and we're gonna scroll to triggers, and then on message. And here you need credentials to connect to Telegram, and creating them is very easy. So I'm gonna show you the process. Okay, all right, we're gonna create on new, and for this we need the bot father. So in Telegram, you can search for bot father, that one. And I already created one. Once you click on start, it's going to tell you these are the commands. So you do the new bot command, and then it's going to ask you what's the name, what's the username, do that. And then it's going to give you this code over here. So the first thing you need to do is you test your bot, you send them a message, and then you take the access code, and we're gonna copy this, and here we're gonna paste it, and we're gonna name this Telegram test bot. Save. So now we have connected our Telegram test bot, and we can already test, and you will see that we have already a message here which say test, which is this latest message that I've sent to the bot. All right, so now we have the trigger. Now that we have our trigger working, the next step is to route the incoming message. We're gonna do some routing because sometimes we may wanna just get a quick command, whether we, I don't know, we're querying the status of our bots or the P&L of a deal or something like that. We don't need the AI intervention for that. and there is no reason for us to be paying tokens. So we can route those special messages as commands, and we're going to use an if trigger. And here you have the input is all the output of the previous nodes, and you can use any of that in the configuration of the node. Another thing to notice is that each of these values, they have their type. For example, this one that you can see the check mark is a Boolean, and this one with A is text. This one is a number, and this one is an object. And you're gonna need to select the right comparison here, because if you select a number is greater than, but then you put a text here, it's gonna fail. So what we're gonna do is we want the value of the message, in this case test, to either string start with a /, and we're gonna add one more condition, and we're gonna do the same thing. Expression there equals, we change this again to starts with, and this one. And it's either or. And initially I started with only this, but then you will see later why we're gonna need also to put this one. So if either of these conditions is matched, it's gonna go through the true branch. And if it's not matched, it's gonna go through the false branch here. Now let's build the path for the true branch. So this is if it's matching our commands. So we may have here different kind of commands like get bot deals or list DCA bot, something like that. So depending on which command, we're gonna perform certain actions. And for that, we need to add a switch branch. And you can see that we cannot use anything else because there is no data. It means we haven't passed data through the if. And so without that, we can see that and use it as an input. So we're going to do something. We're going to use this, but because I don't need to actually even send another message, I can just directly modify this and click on save. And then it's going to pin this data. And pinning data is really useful when you are developing the workflow, because nodes that have data pin, they don't actually run. They only output the data that they have pinned. And if you are querying an API or something and you only need to do it once and then pin the data, and each time you run that node, it's going to give you the same output. You can also edit like I just did. And in this case, it's because I wanted to match the /. So if we run now the workflow, it went through the true branch, and now it reached the switch. And now we can use the inputs from the two previous nodes to decide what happened next. Here's another thing that I should explain. The nodes that perform splitting of paths, like this. When you want to reference data, before that, if we want to reference from the switch, the Telegram trigger text, I found that it's usually better to do it from the if rather from this one. And I'll show you that. You see, we have the text here, but this is on the if node. We also have the text on the Telegram trigger. But what I found is that because the path is split, sometimes if it's going to give you an error telling you it doesn't know which item to reference. So I always use the closest one, which is in this case, if. So if we're going to do that this message, and in this case, we're going to choose is equal to, and we're going to write the command here, clear. And what we're going to do with this is to clear the AI memory. And you might remember I had that on my initial workflow. And the reason for that is because we're using memory to be able to talk to the agent back and forth. For the agent, each message is like a new message. So unless you send them the previous message history, they won't know what you're talking about. However, this is useful, but it can also get really costly if you always send them the message history, because the number of input tokens is going to grow exponentially. So whenever you're starting a new task and the AI agent doesn't need to remember what you talk about, then you want to run this command clear, and then you will start from new, and you're not sending any past messages to the agent. Now, to clean the memory, we are going to use a memory manager node. This one, chat memory manager, delete messages, and we're gonna click on all messages. Now you will see that we have no previous input because we still haven't run the data up until here. So let's do that. Let's modify this, and it's gonna match our command clear. And if we run it now, it will go all the way here. And in the memory, we're gonna use this one, Windows buffer memory. And in the session ID, this is the most important part, we're gonna define below. The session ID is how your server identifies the chat history. So this window buffer memory is actually saved on your server's RAM memory, and it's local. And you can write any key you want. You can even say like this, as long as you reference this same key from other parts of the application, is going to be performing actions on the same memory. I like to use the chat ID for this, because if I change the bot, it will also automatically change the chat ID. But if you want to hard code it, that's up to you. So I'm going to use it here, chat ID. This is going to be the key, and you can see that is this number. And okay, I think that's all. And now what I want to do is to reply, to send a response to Telegram saying that the memory was clear. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna say Telegram send, and there is nothing. So let's test it again. Wait, let's undo this. Now let's test. Now we're here, and in the chat ID, we're gonna use this chat ID, and the text that we're gonna send is memory cleared. So now we're gonna activate and see if it works. Test. There you go. And memory cleared. So that worked. Now there is nothing actually on the memory, so there was nothing to clear, but later on it will come in pretty handy. Now we're gonna do something pretty interesting. We're gonna add another command that's gonna run our authentication workflow, and it's gonna retrieve data from Gainium. So we're gonna name this command, I don't know, maybe DCA deals, something like that. And we are going to check if the incoming text has this word. And if it does, it's going to go through this route. Now we're going to move this so we have a little more space. And in this route, we are going to add a sub workflow. So there you go. Execute a sub workflow. And we're going to change this by ID. And as you remember, we're going to write here the workflow ID of the current workflow. We need to change it to expression. And you already got our current ID. And this is what we need to specify to run this workflow. So not all inputs are required, but endpoint and method is required. Body, we might use it sometimes or not. Now, to get the endpoint, we're going to go over to the API documentation, and we can see that getting deals is this endpoint, API deals. And we're going to test it out just to see how it works. And let's say that we want to query the open deals that are they're not paper deals, and they're not terminal deals. The first page, and we're gonna leave the ID of the bot blank, so we will get all deals, and we're gonna be getting DCA deals. So we're gonna test this, and you can see here the URL that we are, and for this one, we need to copy only from API deals and what's after. So this part here, we're gonna copy it. And now back on our executed workflow, this is the endpoint we're gonna call. And the method, if you see here, is get. So we're gonna just hard code it here, get, and let's test it out. Nothing happened. Let's see why. Let's modify this to change the text. I think we call this DCA deals. Save, and let's run it again. And you see it ran, and we have a response. And in this response, we have a lot of information about all open deals. Now we could send the whole thing back to Telegram, but honestly, it's a lot of data to go through. So we can do a little bit of cleanup and just return the data that we really want to look at. Now, to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to copy paste the part of the workflow that runs after this, just so you don't have to sit through me typing out stuff. And I'm just going to explain what's happening here behind the scenes. So we have queried our authentication workflow, and we got one item. You can see one item. And inside this item, there is a field with an array of deals. And within those those deals objects, we want to abstract some properties. We don't really need to know everything about that deal. So this is how it works. There's a little bit of code here involved, and for some of you, it may be a little bit intimidating, but you can just copy paste this and just understand that what we're doing here is we're returning data.result. So data.result here, and now each deal is one result. So we're running a map function, and this map is going to iterate through each one of these inside objects, and it's going to return the data we're interested in, which is ID, usage, the levels, and the unrealized profit. This is what I'm interested in. You may want some other fields from that. That's fine. One thing to notice is that, for example, this one, the usage, is not, we don't return it calculated as such. So I am calculating here on the fly based on all the data that we get. And let's test this. And you see now we have 15 items, and each item has only these ones fields that we have selected. And then with this incoming 15 items, we are going to create one field, which is we're gonna put here ID, symbol. So this is gonna be one field now, and now you see this is a text field, deals data. But we have 15 still of those, and we're gonna send, if we were to send this like that, it's gonna send 15 messages to Telegram. We don't want that. We want to aggregate them into one. We're gonna aggregate the deals data. And well, let's run this so you see how it looks. Okay, so now we have one array, which is deals data, and then we are combining the message from this. We are creating a new field that is called message, and we are combining this deals data. And this one, let's run it again, and now you see how it looks. New lines are represented like this, /n, but it will look better when we run it. And here on the Telegram node, I need to change this to my Telegram test bot, and then test, and you see we got a message, and here it is. Each deal, it's showing me the data that I wanted to see. And this is also interesting. These are shortcuts. So if I want to clear the memory, I can do like this. And I just realized that the bot doesn't return a response, and there are two reasons for that. Number one is that when we are testing the workflow, if you send a text to the bot, it won't automatically trigger the workflow, not until you activate it. And that's a limitation of Telegram's API, according to n8n. They say that if you want to test the bot and talk, send the text and so on and have it respond, you need to activate that workflow. So as long as it's not activated, then the only way to test this message is to actually click on the test workflow, and it's gonna retrieve the last message. Now, I did that behind the scenes, and I also didn't get a text, and I wonder why. So I realized that here I actually made a mistake, because we are comparing the text must be equal to clear, right? However, when we click on the shortcut, we also include the bot username. And that's why I said earlier that we're gonna need the @ or / to determine what's a command, because if we run it from the shortcuts, it's going to include that. So here it's not equal to, it must be contains. So here is contains, and here should be as well contains, sorry. And with that, if we run the workflow, and okay, we need to go back and do the same thing. So clear, and there you go. Now we got it, memory cleared. Because we click on test workflow and it was waiting for that message to come in, and we've sent it. Now let's click again, test the workflow, and this time around, we're gonna do this, DCA deals. And there you go, we got the DCA deals information. So there are more commands you could write in this section. You could query bot statuses, you could query combo, grid bots, whatever you want. You have the documentation on how to do that on the API docs, so you can check that out. And for now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the next step of our workflow, which is gonna be talking to the AI agent. Oh, before we proceed, I forgot to mention that these buttons down here, they're called inline keyboard messages or something like that. And you find them here at the end of the node, reply markup, inline keyboard, and then you can have the name and then what's gonna send to the chat. And here we have clear, and we have DCA chat, and we have combo deals, which we haven't done yet, but just so you know where to write those commands. And now let's build the part where we're gonna talk to our AI agent, and we're gonna move this a little bit so it doesn't interfere with authentication flow. And so if you remember, we send a text, and the first things that you check is that is this a command or not? And if it's not a command, then it's gonna send it to the AI agent. So let's do that. Let's click on here, Advanced AI and AI agent. And there are different kind of agents, conversational functions, but the one we're gonna be working with is a tools agent, because this is the best at picking up tools and ensuring that they use tools. And so this is the one that it's better for use case. And the source for the prompt, we're gonna define it below. And here is where we tell the agent what to do. And before typing out this, I'm just gonna copy it from for the workflow that I already made, because honestly, there is quite a bit here to unpack. So maybe I'll just copy and paste. There you go. And let's see what's happening here. So here say you're AI assistant with access to tools. Your task is to help the user interact with their Gainium account, trading bots. Call the appropriate tools and analyze the data. If the user is asking to close a deal, but didn't specify as and how to close it, available values are this and that. Also for closing the deal ID is required. You may attempt to call the tool to get the deals first, and if the target deal is not found, ask the user. So here's where we tell the agent, so here are the tools, and here are a few ground rules. That can be anything. In this case, I said that they should always ask the user how they want to close a deal, because closing a deal is kind of like an important task. And if you do it via the API and you don't specify anything, I think the default option would be to cancel the deal or leave the deal. I cannot remember actually. But you don't want to leave this to default, because maybe the user just forgot to tell you, how they want it closed. So it's better to clarify first. And so I put this specifically for that. And then I say, okay, the response format needs to be in plain text, and here's the user query. And this is the Telegram message coming in. Now, this one is like that because this node hasn't received any data, so it doesn't know what the text message is. And just for testing purposes, if we type here anything else that doesn't start with a forward slash or the @ symbol, let's say, tell me about my DCA deals, and we save this and we run the workflow, it's going to go down this path. There you go. Now it reached the agent, and now the agent has access to all this. And you can see now this is in green because now we can see, you see, tell me about my DCA deals. It already got it. So we got that, and the AI agent actually needs a few subnodes in order to work. It needs a chat model, and well, actually it only needs a chat model. That's the only thing that is completely required. But we are also going to use the memory, and we're going to use the tools. So for the chat model, I'm going to use OpenRouter because it's where I have an account, and we're going to use, I think Sonnet is the only one that during my testing, it was picking up the right tools. And let's try 3.7 is the latest. There are free models. There are many kind of models in OpenRouter, but actually, no, it was Haiku. So the Claude family, they're good at picking models in my experience. And the Haiku, it's like the mini version of their models, but it's still powerful enough to really pick up the tools, and it will cost you a lot less. And so far, my experience with it is been really great. Now, we're going to use a memory, and we can just copy this one we have up here because we're going to be using exactly the same. And this is a memory, and we can open, if you remember, the key is a chat ID. And the most important part, the tools. Now, what we want is for the agent to run the API authentication flow and query the Gainium API, get the data, and execute actions. And for that, we're going to give it a tool, which is the call n8n workflow tool. And if we click here, the workflow that we're going to use is going to be the same as in this workflow. And if you remember, you do that by saying workflow ID. And now it recognizes which workflow it is. And it's telling me that it needs 3 inputs, actually 2. We don't need body most of the time. And so the endpoint and the method. So let's say that we want to make this tool the get deals tool. So it's this one. Actually, we could have one tool for each API endpoint. So we could copy this. Actually, we've used it before. And this is the, okay, so technically we can run it like this. And the method is get. But we're not going to do this. We're not going to hard code the actual URL because we're going to tell the bot how to build it depending on what we're asking. So if we are asking about the DCA deals or combo deals, or are we referring to the terminal, is it paper context or not? All those, the bot can figure out and build the correct URL, but you need to give it good instructions. So let's start by naming the tool, which I haven't done so yet. We're going to call this Gainium deals. And we're going to say, call this tool to get information about the user deals. We're going to do it like that. Now, the method is always going to be get, so we can just write it and that's all. But the endpoint is going to change depending on what we ask. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to click here. Let the model define this parameter. So the model is going to figure out what to write here. And in order for it to figure out properly, I'm going to include a description of how do you build the endpoint. And I'm going to copy from the one I already done because it took me a while to get it right. So I'm going to copy paste and I'm going to explain what we're doing here. So query structure for the endpoint. Base is API deals, required, true. Always include the base. This is because sometimes if I didn't put this, sometimes it will call without the base and then it's going to return not found. So now we say, okay, it also needs to include paper context. whether or not the user is requesting about the paper trading account. Also refer to demo, defaults to false. So basically I explain all the different things that the endpoint might contain. And at the end I say an endpoint format, it follows like this: API deal status equals status and paper context, blah, blah, blah. So now the bot knows how to build this URL based on the definition we're giving it. And let's give it a try. Let's see if it works. If you remember, we already pinned the data. So tell me about my DCA deals. And as you can see, I haven't said if they're paper or not. It defaults to false. So I guess, I find that sometimes the bot will fetch both and will tell you, okay, so here's your paper and here's your real ones. Sometimes it will just default to the real ones. Let's see. Okay, it's thinking. Now we call the tool, it's got the data, and it's elaborating a reply. And there you go. A reply that we didn't get because we didn't put the Telegram node after this, but we can read the reply here. Okay, here's a summary of your open DCA deals, total deals 15, the breakdown, blah, blah, blah. So it tells you about it. You can see that it got the data and it worked. Now, because we didn't get the reply, let's put it here. Let's see, and the text that we need to send is this one. Okay. Now, if we test this step, it's going to send the text now. There you go. And we can see here. I'll help you understand your current DCA deals. Here's a summary. You got these coins. Most deals are currently in loss. And so it's giving us a nice summary of our deals. And let's do this. Let's save the workflow and actually activate it so we can have a conversation with the bot. And we can say, okay, now about my combo deals. There you go. And we got the reply. It took a while, but it got everything. It needs to analyze it and so on. So this is quite useful already as it is. You can chat and get information about your deals, but obviously you want to add more tools to it where it can add funds, reduce funds, close deals, open deals, bots, start bots, depending on a lot of things. It could be, for example, you could use even Telegram trigger an incoming text from even the Gainium notifications where a deal ran out of DCA orders or there's an error, you know. You can have the bot intercept those messages as well and run actions on it. But you can also use external triggers. For example, every hour, check this website or this news and analyze the sentiment of this coin. And if it's positive, buy. If it's negative, sell. Something like that. You could do anything you want. And because the rest of the tools, they're going to follow the same logic. I'm not going to really explain one by one. It's just all going to be the same. And if you have any questions about how to use a specific tool, remember that each tool can be one of the API endpoints. If you have any difficulties with that, just come back to the forum and let us know. So that's it. I think this is a very exciting development because now you have the possibility to do almost anything you can imagine. And I'll be really happy to see what you guys can come up with. And if you can share also these workflows on our community and let other members use them, and then you can also see what other members are building. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you on the next one.